When you rent a new home, it will come furnished or unfurnished, but if you're in social housing, it's standard practice for something pretty vital to be missing: carpets. When one tenant leaves, they're usually ripped out, and the new tenant then has to replace them. So why is this happening, and who is the hero helping people who can't afford new carpets? I'm Daniel Hewitt, and this is what you need to know. Joining me is our reporter Will Tullis, who's been looking into this for us. Will, look, I've been looking into social housing issues for 3 or 4 years now, and I remember coming across this a few months ago and thinking, why on earth would you rip out carpets, perfectly good carpets, that someone can then use? You've been looking into this. Have you found out why?
Yeah, absolutely. So what some housing associations and councils have told us privately is that essentially when a new tenant moves in, they've got to refurbish the home and make sure it's in a good condition for a new tenant. And as part of that, if they need to paint the walls or anything, they need to cover carpets. That takes time, that takes money. And when local authority budgets are decreasing, they're so low and they're so stretched, that's time and money some of them are saying they don't have. So in place of that, what they're doing is they're just ripping out carpets to save them that time and money. But what that means is an estimated 1.2 million adults in the UK are having to live in homes without carpets or proper flooring. And of those 1.2 million, almost 800,000 are social housing tenants.
Let's be clear here. With social housing tenants, we're talking about people who are in either council housing or housing association housing. And in that sense, it's people who often are kind of economically not in a great place, sometimes quite vulnerable. They've been placed in social housing for a reason. The one thing they probably can't afford immediately, and a lot of people can't afford this even if they're in good jobs, earning good money, renting privately, is to fit the whole house with new carpets. Is there not a way around here that when tenants move in and say, well, actually, I'm more than happy to sign a bit of paper that says, just keep the carpets in place?
Well, that's it. That's exactly right. So how a lot of housing associations and councils justify this is they say that they're liable if a tenant complains about the condition of a carpet, if they say the carpet's too dirty, or if they trip and fall on the carpet. So they say to remove that liability, it's easier for them to just remove the carpet. But then it's up to the tenant at their own expense and at their own time to source their own carpet and fit that. And that's money, if you're thinking of carpeting a living room, that can cost upwards of £1,000. That's money that, people living in social housing simply don't have. And especially at a time of a cost of living crisis as well. And these families are having to prioritize things like ovens, heating, groceries. So often carpets are actually very low down that priority list.
I remember I think it was in Newcastle, meeting a young couple who just had a baby, then moved into a housing association flat, and they walked in, there was no carpets anywhere. And they discovered this, and this is the problem, isn't it? Most people who are often on a waiting list for a social home for a long time, they eventually get the keys, and it's the sort of start of their new life. Okay, I've got some stable housing, and they walk in, there's no carpets there. And you've been meeting people, haven't you, in that situation?
Yeah, that's right. So we filmed with one woman, Ashley. She's a social housing tenant, single mum, and she moved into a social housing property with no carpets. 2 really young kids, 3 and 6 years old, and there was no carpet throughout the whole property, including in the children's bedrooms. And yeah, we spoke to her about the impact that's had on her day to day and her mental health and her dignity, simply. I think we've got a clip here. Let's take a listen.
My daughter, she's old enough to have friends come over, and they're always asking her, oh, why don't you have carpet, or why don't you have flooring? It's quite embarrassing for her. This room in particular, I don't really mind about the other rooms, but this room in particular should be the safest space because it's the children's, where it's not. So yeah, it does affect your day-to-day mental health as well.
There is something, just listening to Ashley there is something so upsetting about it, because if you're renting privately or you buy a new home, there are quite basic systems here to ensure that when you move in, the house is in a decent condition. Carpets, flooring feels like a pretty basic thing. So when I first came across this, I thought, what a daft rule this is, that you rip all the carpets. Then you listen to that and you realise it's not just daft, it's damaging. There is a mental toll, but an economic toll on people like Ashley and her children.
100%. It's something that some charities describe as the poverty premium. It's expensive to be poor because you can't think long term. You're living day to day, essentially. If you think of Ashley, she's got no carpets or had no carpets throughout her home. That means she's having to pay more for heating, for energy. I mean, it's a danger for our kids too. Think there's no carpet in the room. What if they trip? What if they fall? It's not safe. So there are so many knock-on effects to that as well.
I remember meeting a guy a few years ago talking about the poverty premium and that idea that it's small things, but they add up. If you live in an area where the biggest supermarket is a 15-minute drive away, but you don't have a car, you therefore shop in your local sort of convenience store where everything's more expensive. And these things add up, don't they? And the one thing that listening to Ashley there struck me was that when you move in to your home, and we'd have done this when you move into your own home at some point, renting or owning, it's so stressful. Moving house is the most stressful thing you can do. And yet the first thing you're thinking of is, well, I'm now going to have to replace all the flooring.
Yeah, and I think that's what some see as the real scandal of this. So many of those carpets, before they're ripped out by housing associations and councils, are in perfectly good condition. And some of the people moving into those properties are some of the most vulnerable people in society. And they'd happily take a carpet with a few scuffs on it or a bit of dirt on it or whatever. So, what a lot of people are saying is, please, housing associations, just get tenants to sign a form saying, I take responsibility and liability if anything happens, but I'm perfectly happy to take carpet that's maybe not in 100% mint condition.
It's great that you're looking into it because it's really important. I think it's one of those things that people will listen to this and think, I just don't get this. This is such a simple solution. But there is someone looking into this. You've been speaking to her, and she sounds great. She sounds amazing. What has she been doing?
The brilliant woman, Paya Honey, she runs, I say she runs a charity. She's a one-woman band, essentially. She runs an organisation called No Floor, No More. And she's, in her own time, with her own money, off her own back, she's on a one-woman mission to source carpet, get in touch with people who need it, some who are in, as I said, really vulnerable situations, single parents, people fleeing domestic violence, and taking the time to source the carpet, fit it. I think we've got a clip of her talking about why this is so important and why she's doing what she's doing.
If you go to void a property and the person before has left the carpet there, leave it in place. Everyone should have flooring in this country. It is freezing and the kids need safe environments. But say, for example, you haven't got a floor, it makes you a bit miserable. You'll go to the NHS, you might ask for antidepressants, you might hurt yourself on the floors, they're dangerous. That's NHS money, all from taking up flooring. And the big spin-off, social workers, health visitors, leave the flooring, leave the people happier. It's a no-brainer, you save money.
You listen to that, it's pretty hard to disagree. It's pretty hard to disagree. Also, Paya Honey, what a great name that is. You spent some time with Paya, and I think you spent the day with her, didn't you, in terms of what she was doing? Yeah. And I think you were telling me that while you were there filming with her, she was kind of inundated with people.
Yeah, that's right. It was kind of just a regular day for her, just inundated with calls, always on her phone, texting, messaging. This woman who's come from a domestic violence shelter. She's moved into a property with no carpet. I'm sorting her out. She was taking donations from suppliers, because also that's another interesting thing. There's an ecological angle to this, because all this carpet, it's in perfectly good condition. And if it's ripped out, it's often destined for landfill, perfectly good carpet. And so, she was taking donations from carpet suppliers and carpet fitters that had stock that otherwise would have been destined to landfill. She talked us through some of her stock, some of which was worth in the tens of thousands of pounds, which would have just been put in the ground. And as we were filming, there was one guy who came in, single dad, Matthew. He'd been homeless. He'd just been rehomed into a property that had its carpet ripped out. And he said essentially he's meant to have visitation. He's meant to have the kids every weekend, but those kids weren't able to stay around because it wasn't safe for them because of the carpet situation. So, he came and picked up the carpet from Pi, and he was so unbelievably grateful, saying, this is going to absolutely sort me out. It's going to mean that my kids are going to be able to stay over. I'm actually going to be able to be a dad. So it just shows, the brilliance of what Pi is doing. But I think
it shows that knock-on effect, doesn't it? It shows kind of what seems like a kind of small thing of, okay, I need to get that carpet replaced. It's not just a money thing. It's also that knock-on effect of, well, dad can't have his kids for the weekend.
Yeah.
It's those things. Again, it's talking about the group of people we're talking about here. The situation right now is that people who are given social housing is often they are the most vulnerable. They're people that need it, and this is the last thing they need in their lives.
Yeah, and I think as amazing as it was filming with Paya and seeing she's an absolute machine, as I said, this one-woman mission, she is just one woman. She doesn't have funding. She's doing this all off her own back. And what she's calling for, and what a lot of charities are calling for, is for the government to make this a priority, what they call furniture poverty, not having proper carpets, flooring, furniture and housing. And the government's going to review what's known as the Decent Home Standard, which I'm sure you're very aware of. That's upcoming. And what a lot of charities are calling on is for the government to make having proper flooring, proper carpets a priority in their decent home standard. Wales has already done that in the last sort of year and a half or so. They've made having proper carpets a requirement for housing providers, and people here in England are asking for the same thing.
It feels like such a small change here would make such a big difference. Will, thank you very much for coming to talk about it. It's really important, and it's one of those issues, again, when you first hear about it, you think, this is just mad, but it's so good that you're looking into it, and hopefully things will change. Will, thank you very much. And to watch Will's full report, head to itv.com/news, and you can catch up with all our reporting on the many issues facing social housing tenants on our podcast, The Trapped. Pretty good, I've heard, wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to What You Need to Know. And don't forget, you can watch full episodes on ITVX, YouTube, and Spotify. Until our next briefing, thank you very much for joining us.